Chapter 498. To some extent, Li Hongyuan was definitely a man of action. If he said he would enter the palace, he would enter the palace. However, Li Hongyuan didn't go to see Luqingdi. Instead, he brought people to the Jade Essence Palace to show concern for his foster mother, who was in poor health. Wasn't that reasonable? If you want to see Luqingdi, it would be difficult to explain how he found out about his illness. It might even arouse unnecessary suspicion. However, noble consort Su was different. If Luqingdi knew that Li Hongyuan brought Gong Jiu into the palace, he would definitely go to the Jade Essence Palace if he wanted to. All emperors wanted to live a long life. Naturally, they would be more willing to live a little longer. When noble consort Su heard that Li Hongyuan went to see her, she wasn't as happy as she was originally. She was also puzzled. Why did this adopted son suddenly change? He had ignored her for a long time. After a long time, she understood that her adopted son was really throwing a tantrum with her because he had a bad temper. If he was really angry, he should have calmed down a long time ago. There must be another reason. In the beginning, she was stupid. She thought that if she did her best, this adopted son would treat her with the same importance, and that her position in his heart was irreplaceable. Now that she looked at it, it was just a joke. The imperial family had always been filled with ingrates. In fact, her adopted son wouldn't suddenly change. It was just that she was used by Li Hongyuan as a raft. However, noble consort Su continued to act as usual. Yuan is here? Why aren't you coming in? She seemed unusually happy, tears welling up in her eyes. Li Hongyuan was still calm and walked in with an extraordinary bearing. This son greets mother. Noble consort Su was a little dazed. Seeing this son again, it was as if a lifetime had passed. It had only been a few months. Last year, he went to Jiangnan for half a year, but she didn't have such an illusion. Why? Why? Of course, it was because their feelings for each other had faded. They didn't even mention it. More importantly, noble consort Su didn't receive any benefits directly or indirectly because of him. Noble consort Su couldn't think of these things. Or rather, she didn't want to think about it. Yuan is finally willing to come and see Imperial Mother. Imperial consort Su's voice seemed to carry a hint of complaint, but also unconcealable joy. Li Hongyuan waved his hand, and the palace maids beside noble consort Su retreated to the side. Li Hongyuan stepped forward and sat beside noble consort Su's couch. Perhaps it was to let Li Hongyuan see how terrible her current situation was. Imperial consort Su didn't dress up. It was more uncomfortable to sit up, so there wouldn't be a shortage of people to sabotage. It had to be said that even though Imperial consort Su required 81 eminent monks, she still subconsciously wanted to obtain the one near the capital care personally presided. Why did it in reality? She had never been clear because Imperial noble consort. She had a good relationship with her, regardless of whether they were sincere. And her adopted son would speak up. Was she really a soft percentage? Anyone who gathered near this altar would she influence? I guess concubine Xian must have thought of Prince Jingwan and Li Hongyuan. If her relationship with her adopted son was still the same, Jingwan felt that wasn't then even if something happened to Steve 11 she would something about him that she couldn't quite /1 the favor she had received in 7 was more due to this HTML. It was a Buddhist expected. Just this made Imperial concubine whether it had in chapter 499. Jingwan went to the same time because of his current sorry state, and the palace servant she wanted to frame Jingwan knew now felt his legs. That's right. Perhaps it was because thinking of this ingrate princessy name, but the Imperial noble consort she wouldn't be. She clearly could have fancied Li Hongyuan's elbow as a result rested on his. She was accidentally in his hand was naturally poisoning last year because Li Hongyuan didn't. She looked radiant, closer. She didn't put princessy name. If it had been someone more alive, smile. Luqingdi changes slightly lowered any grudges against his. As expected, vaguely, but it might not be so she knew about him Imperial. Although he didn't say it, any man who knew that his woman she clearly knew for another man's sake of benefit that the Imperial noble consort was getting. Whether it was because of his as long as it was used because Jingwan had exposed the truth. Jingwan had a good Russian. It's actually quite hard to live. Jingwan didn't care. Her expression because Jingwan came to the palace affected by Li Hongyuan. She just stepped into the door, slid in front of him. The Empress Yang had to stop cooperating. How could you didn't need to me? Even if Jingwan Imperial noble really on Wei Xian Fei, the Imperial consort's pupils contracted sharply. Who knew what kind of rumors Imperial noble consort? Luqingdi's head, her eyes were also no threat is considered. An Imperial Jingwan still palace is a mess. Even if this adopted side hers was taking care of Yuan had a when Jingwan saw Imperial Noble Consort inside, how he was still rest assured. It seemed that it was almost time for her, at least for her. Jingwan said, wanting to control this Luqing's heart using the last time he entered the palace. Therefore, it was a bit like, even if he might not be obedient, when he went back that day, she could give birth basically act according to Jingwan snorted. No special reality had seemed that it wasn't the right slap wasn't right. Imperial Noble was not the pregnancy on the surface. He drank a lot of wine alone. She suffered and fell into a deep pregnant women. She had very sharp eyes. He didn't drink. She had never seen. But he was still instead. She looked a lot long. Did he in this way? Her belly looked a little Imperial consort. Imperial Noble consort. Nothing could be seen. Closed the palace door long. But Yuan always when she saw Jingwan, how come Mufei was stimulated at once, trying to make Li Hanyuan clicked his tongue. He's used to being appearing. What would happen doing if a pregnant woman isn't about to civility with you anymore? Lu Qingdi's brows and belly cry out and persuade him. So Jingwan is saying that when the palace was in a state of chaos, even though they hone you, we know that you were a good person. After all, we don't ask for anything else. Really think so? We only ask biological son. I can deal with him, however, Imperial father. After I'm done, Jingwan agreed. You still help me reprimand, but in her heart, she was cursing. Imperial consort indeed fine things that been, but I'm afraid that you will be in trouble in the end. I only called you Mufei. All right, you can go back. That's all. Yes. Do you really think that daughter-in-law will take her leave? Wronging myself. Jingwan crouched down and left. You don't know how carefree I am sometimes. relaxed face, but for you, gloomy shouldn't matter in an instant. In any case, you look coldly at the palace servant who tried to wronging your biological son. Drag him out and beat him to death, and yourself. Your Majesty, occasionally, your Majesty, Wang will feel please spare my life when he sees Imperial consort Sue's complexion instantly turned ashen. His mouth was already and her breathing became hurried. It was no matter what his original intention was. Li Hanyuan sat up straight. He had said something that he lifted his chin towards Gong, so he had to take the initiative. Imperial consort take a heavy price. Yes. Even if Imperial respectfully responded, was pregnant stepped the dragon seed, wanting to clasp even if she gave birth to a prince's wrist. It was impossible for her to. You're not allowed to touch Ben. Therefore, since her status would not shed all pretenses of cordiality. It was hard to say what would happen. Imperial consort believe the person Li Hanyuan to some extent. Gong Zhou also obediently retreated a little. The former way was an internal strife now. If you don't raise him properly, the princes were fighting. How can you watch your grandson be born? That's a child much more looking forward to for many years. As the Imperial consort Sue's expression, she was about to lose control of the situation. She didn't know if she was simply surrounding countries more or less knew about the poison in her son's body. Therefore, no one had the time to care about. It was also the sterilization powder now. So it was difficult if she died at this time to connect the two. She would probably die. She had drugged her son more than 10 years ago. When the Yuan was glad how could he have known at that time? Would not take advantage of this opportunity to he might have found out later. The former way was also Ben Wang has been looking forward to hindered by the years. Originally, I was also looking forward to you. She didn't care about the gazes of the people around her. I'm afraid as for those people's imaginations, Li Hanyuan nodded. Imaginations had always been a bottomless pit. Imperial consort Su still couldn't figure out people vomit blood and anger. However, and some might make people laugh, and that was that she absolutely Jingwan returned this adopted son the same way. Since she didn't know that a certain person would take the initiative. You've really surprised me. She told Li Hanyuan about the situation that she learned from Imperial. Or have you always had them? Li Hanyuan just no matter how good your Imperial father is, didn't have any other. He won't hand over the river as if it had nothing to do with it. The throne can be Jingwan expressed a little dissatisfaction and reached out to pull his face. Li Hanyuan remained calm and unruffled. She used herself as the prize for you to come back. Imperial is it really good for you to be like this? Voice suddenly rose. Then Wan it was abnormally we want this husband to do, and her face Li Hanyuan held Jingwan's as a malicious spirit. Wan. Between me and Japanese, we haven't interacted for even a day, and you were cut out. It can be said that I have no feelings for her. Imperial concubine. It's because I knew that she was the one who let me malice in her laughter, I was able to redeem but also endless satisfaction from revenge. Even if I knew that she was still alive, none of the consorts would seen the Imperial noble. All my feelings have been used up on jealous, and the Emperor's kindness to the Imperial noble consort. I think that I have already done what I can do in his bones. As for the consequences, Imperial noble consort Su was very ill and couldn't see the Emperor even once. She would be covered in sweet words. The Imperial noble hugging him tightly, only had a Jingwan really didn't know what to say, and the Emperor there was no need to say anything else. The Imperial noble consort, no matter what it is, again, I will bear it with you. How could Imperial felt that with such a man who treated her wholeheartedly when she first took over raising Li Hanyuan? She more or less wanted to strangle him to death. She might feel some negative emotions in the end because of the death. Reason prevailed over everything. But if there was a day when she knew how much benefit it would be for her, then Jingwan felt that she would probably. She had always thought that those emotions from back then were gone. Li Hanyuan had been hidden very deeply. His mind still going on, slowly rotted away. There was no other moment. They suddenly burst out like a flash flood. However, tsunami. Things still went wrong, completely drowning her, and it wasn't as smooth as expected. That bitch dominated the emperor. Only a small part of the 81 days of ritual had been completed. She still dominated the emperor's heart. So what if the emperor treasured her so much? But after receiving a hint from Master Chen, her to death, Jingwan once again rushed into the palace in a hurry. She deserved it. When she saw Qin Shufei, because she knew that things were indeed a little troublesome. You bitch, if I had known this originally a peaceful, I would have strangled you to death long ago. Beautiful woman. Li Hanyuan didn't look at the expressions of the palace servants who served. Of course, anyway, this feeling could not be felt by those who were around her. There were just a few palace servants. But for those who did not see her often, be able to enter his eyes. It would be more obvious. You just looked at imperial concubine with her current self. For more than 20 years, how long has the situation been going on? And why didn't you send someone to expose himself? Qin Shufei seemed entered the palace only for that. But after all, in the end, ritual targeted he didn't want to pretend to be polite with this woman anymore. So it didn't affect this game was beyond his imagination. It's not that I don't want to tell you. What you said true. Qin Shufei's voice was a little relatively soft. The situation is filled with endless sadness. It seems very uncomfortable. Imperial concubine, I was like a cloud of white felt that something was wrong, but now my four limbs have been outburst of emotions. I'm not sure what will happen if all of them Imperial concubine, will they disappear? Why don't you take a look at the door? Or will my current appearance be infinitely enlarged? Li Hongyuan's body, no matter which one sitting sideways, it's very difficult to accept. Covered all the expressions on his face. I can more or less guess Imperial concubine, she probably won't let the second situation at the door on the Emperor's dragon robe. The imperial noble consort was willing to sacrifice her soul for her son's sake. Only one person. So how could she allow at this moment dangers to happen? Was furious. Your Highness, his eyes were find a reason and he looked like a furious lion. You don't do anything foolish. Imperial concubine Qin Shufei was scared out of her wits. Don't worry. There won't be any problems in the short term. There are two reasons for this situation. As if there was wind under his feet. The person Li Hanyuan understood the situation very well. And second, to step back. There was a problem with the senior monk. Lu Qingdi raised his hand and slapped her. Although the other party's cultivation was far inferior, it was obvious that he had used 100%. Master Chen wasn't the only expert in this Imperial concubine, Reverend Su, do you know what the problem is? Wanted to dodge. Li Hongyuan's face, but her current physical condition didn't. But that didn't mean that he would. She took a solid off someone who liked to play tricks behind his back, and then a third. It would be Imperial concubine. If he didn't find out, Su could only cover her head. If he did, scream. I can roughly deduce two locations, but before she could say anything, she was slapped back, and Li Hongyuan's heart skipped a beat. After being beaten violently, the Northwest can be explained as Imperial concubine, but the Su couldn't resist. Thinking of a certain possibility, she lay on the bed. Li Hanyuan felt that Li Hanyuan stepped forward and grabbed Lu Qingdi's. He wanted to see if these people could really stir up a storm with such a Imperial concubine right under his nose. Only then did the furious Is there any way to resolve the Imperial noble consorts? He looked at Li Hanyuan, although there no face was silent. It's obvious that it's not even revealed a Your Highness, don't worry. Suddenly, this humble monk he was at a loss. His best. However, Li Hanyuan prevent the situation from worsening. As if you didn't want to look at it. If you want to resolve it completely, his eyes fell on Imperial concubine's source. Imperial prince understands. Su happened to meet his eyes. The next day, only Imperial concubine, Su could see the true ruthlessness. Although he was still late, it was basically no matter what everything had been settled. Imperial concubine Li Hanyuan was also raised quite straightforward for so many years. Imperial father, when I was sick, this son required to be stationed in the Northwest Army to clothes, as an army supervisor. As long as it was good, this really can be described as a stone that no matter what her original purpose was. Many people's ears were buzzing, and Lu Qingdi was also stunned for a while. Li Hanyuan seemed to have fallen into a memory. But when he saw the rare seriousness on Li Hongyuan's face, but when it came from his mouth, his eyes gradually sharpened bitterness. Do you know what Imperial concubine his son is Su hadn't known his true colors. Li Hanyuan raised his head. She would have been deceived by him at this moment. The Imperial noble consort's ritual Li Hanyuan has gone awry. You bastard. Because of the war in the Northwest, who are you pretending there are too many vengeful Imperial concubine Su blurted out subconsciously. Although these things will completely because of Li Hongyuan's interruption time, Lu Qingdi so happens who had regained his rationality. Imperial noble consort heard this. According to Master Liao Qin, he raised his hand and was about to hit her consort, but was stopped by Li Hanyuan. To a certain extent, Father, our destinies are killed my birth mother. If the grievances of the Northwest are transferred, his voice was filled with sadness. Then the Imperial noble consort's influence almost neutralized. Although the Imperial noble consort you want her, raise this son. Don't listen to this bitch's nonsense for several months. It's her. This is probably the only thing I can do for her. Don't listen to her. Don't Imperial father. Please try to explain incoherently. Li Hongyuan's emotions didn't fluctuate. Smile, but Lu Qingdi was moved. Then what is it? It's my fault. It's all my fault. If he could be open as
rational,
rational, but couldn't
and
say
not be
anything,
instigated by others,
fabricate nonsense,
then his beloved would
talk
be fine.
nonsense, then their
Try to
family
fool
of
him
three
as much as possible.
thinking and
Father,
thinking,
you're
Lu
hesitating.
Qingdi covered
Then what
his
else is
face
there
with
to
his
say?
hands. The last
In the
bit of
court,
hope in Li
in front of the
Hongyuan's
civil and military
eyes
officials,
seemed to have been
he seemed to be
completely
unable to
destroyed.
control himself.
He didn't want to say anything
and
more
began
to
to
Lu
cry.
Qingdi.
Li
and looked at
Hongyuan watched
Imperial
and sneered
concubine
in his
Su
heart.
again. No matter
I
why
always
he
thought
lost
that
control
mother
of his
truly
emotions,
treated me as
Li
her own
Hongyuan
son.
despised it. But it turns
The
out that it
courtiers looked
wasn't.
at each other in
dismay.
comparison.
Of course,
You hate me so much
not
that
everyone
you
was
can't
attracted
wait for
by
me to
Lu
die.
Qing Emperor's
This son
loss of
begs
self-control.
Imperial Father for
Instead,
one last
they
thing.
were considering
Imperial
what kind
Father,
of impact
please give
Jin
Imperial
Qin
Mother a
Wang's
way
trip
out.
to the
Lu
northwest would
Qingdi's
have.
lips trembled
Furthermore,
as if he was struggling.
what Jin Qin Wang said,
Thank you, Father.
how much truth
With
was
this,
there?
I'll repay Mother's
Lu
kindness.
Qingdi
of
finally
raising me.
controlled
This
his
is the last time I'll
emotions.
call you this.
Lao Lu,
Imperial
this is no
concubine.
small matter.
After Li
Zhang needs to
Hongyuan
consider
finished
it.
speaking.
Moreover,
He flicked his sleeves
Zhang needs to know
and
whether
left.
the grievances will affect
His footsteps
you if they are
seem to be a
transferred
little
to you.
hurried.
If it's
and he even forgot the
disadvantageous
last
to you,
etiquette.
then Jin will
Gong
have
Jiu
no
also
face
followed
to
him
see
out.
your imperial
But not
mother
long
in the
after.
future.
Gong
Do
Jiu
you still
turned
have the
back
face
and
to
saluted
see her
neither
when you
too
strangled her to
quickly
death
nor
with
too
your own
slowly.
hands?
His
Person's
Highness
death
originally
is like an
wanted to take
extinguished
me
lamp.
to see
But
an
after
imperial
death,
concubine
they will stay in the
Sue's
world
health.
for a short time.
Even now, when they
His
dissipate,
Highness still
the
can't let
grievances
go
will
of
naturally
imperial concubine
disappear.
Su.
Therefore,
Please let me take
Imperial
your
Father
pulse
to
and rest
fulfill
assured.
His Highness's
Lu Qingdi
last
nodded.
filial
Zhang
piety.
understands.
Imperial
The longer it
concubine,
drags on,
Su almost
the more
bit
disadvantageous
religious
it will be for
restrain
the
herself
imperial
from blurting
Gui
out some
Fei.
words. Imperial
After
Father,
all,
please
Lu
make a
Qingdi was
decision
watching
as soon as
covetously
possible.
from the side.
A Ken
Now
will
that he had been
retire.
completely
When he
deceived
came,
by Li
his
Hongyuan,
presence was strong.
that bastard,
When he left,
he wouldn't listen
it was
to
the
a
same.
single word she said.
However, if
She
she
didn't even
dared
want
to
to wait
say
for the morning
anything
court to
inappropriate,
So
she didn't know what
why
kind of
bother coming to the
consequences it
morning
would bring.
court?
Once
Gong
it's
Jiu
over,
took imperial
wouldn't it be better
concubine
if he
Su's
directly
whole
went
step by
to see the
step
emperor
and
Is he
prescribed
here to
medicine?
show off
It
his
didn't matter whether he knew
uniqueness
how to
everyone,
use the prescription
what they can
or
think
not.
of.
He tidied
Lu
up the medicine
Qingdi
box.
Can naturally
Your
think of
Majesty,
as well. I'll
in his
take my
view,
leave first.
It's probably
Wait a
because his
moment.
son didn't want to
Lu
meet him in
Qingdi
private.
didn't forget the
Compared
reason
to Li
why he
Hongyuan
first
and the
came to the
imperial
Jade
Gui
Essence
Fei.
Palace.
Who does
He
Lu
just didn't
Qingdi care
expect
more
to
about?
encounter such a thing.
Needless to say,
the imperial
it's
concubine
definitely the
he
latter.
thought was virtuous.
Moreover,
and
Lu Qingdi wants to
virtuous
see the
turned
imperial
out to be
Gui
a snake
Fei.
in human skin.
Naturally,
He had been
doesn't want
miserably
anything to happen
deceived
to
by
the
her
imperial
all these
Gui
years.
Fei.
More importantly,
But considering his own
she exposed
plans
the
for
wrong
Fu
thing he
Yunting,
did in the past.
how could he let his son go
the
to
thing
the
that Lu
Northwest
Qingdi
so
didn't want to
easily?
recall the most in
As
his
for
life,
whether or not his
and
son
the thing
will go
that
to
he
the
even
Northwest
deceived
Army.
himself to
Lu
forget,
Qingdi thought about
was
it
so
before,
easily
but he didn't care.
exposed. Because when
According
a
to
prince
Lu
goes to
Qingdi's
the
own
battlefield,
thoughts,
this
even if
woman
it's to be an
must
army
let him have a
supervisor,
taste of living
he
a
can't go
life
alone.
worse than death.
The accompanying
But
personnel
because he
can
had
be
already
arranged by him.
agreed to his
Just
son's
like last
request
year,
when he
he
went
didn't
to
know
Jiangnan, what his son
while Lu
thought of
Qingdi
him
was
now.
lost in his
If he left
thoughts,
first,
while looking at the
he would
portrait
break his
of
promise
the imperial
later.
Gui
Perhaps
Fei.
even their last friendship
Li Xian
would be
came to
broken.
see him.
Since
In
Lu
fact,
Qingdi asked
Lu
him to
Qingdi
stay,
liked this son
Gong
very
Jiu
much.
naturally didn't
Although
dare
nominally
to not
Lu
stay, so he
Qingdi
quietly
recognized
stood
him
aside.
as his
Lu
adopted
Qingdi
son.
looked at
Lu
imperial
Qingdi would do his
concubine
best to
Su
do
with
whatever he
heavy
asked
eyes.
him to do.
If it
Lu
weren't for
Qingdi
Yuan
did not ask
pleading,
for the reason,
I might
and
have
did not
cut you
bargain.
alive.
Lu Qingdi
No matter how
did
strong
not
a
need to
person's
worry about
mental
him.
endurance
Lu Qingdi
was
was lost in
they
thought.
couldn't help
Li
but be
Xian just
afraid
stood there
in the face of
quietly,
death.
not saying a
Imperial
word.
concubine
Su
shrank.
Tell me,
and her teeth would
should Jin
chatter.
let Jin
She didn't
Qin
think
Wang
that
go
Li
to
Hongyuan
Northwest?
kept her alive.
This was the
for
first
sake
time
of their
Lu
last
Qingdi
mother-son
asked for Li Suyin's
relationship.
opinion
But
instead
now,
of directly
she was indeed
giving an
alive
order
because
or giving
of
a
him.
task.
No one wanted
Li
to die
Suyin's
if they could
expression
live.
didn't change.
Therefore, Emperor,
no matter how much
forgive me for
malice
speaking
she harbored
bluntly.
against Li Hongyuan
According to
in her
Emperor's
heart,
plan for Fu
she
Yunting,
couldn't say it out loud.
If Jin Qin
A
Wang
person in a
goes to the
rage
Northwest
could do
he could be
anything.
used. For example,
Impudent.
This man
Lu Qingdi
strangled
was
his
furious,
beloved woman to death,
using his
because
son's
of anger.
safety to deal
Compare with that
Fu
woman,
Yunting.
she was
It was
nothing at all.
simply,
Therefore, it was better
Emperor
not to
can
send
provoke
trustworthy
this man.
people to
Lu
protect
Qingdi
Wang.
glanced at the people present,
and his
if
eyes
it's done
fell on
properly,
the servants
there
of
won't
the
be
Jade
any
Palace.
evidence left behind.
Just like what they heard
and
from Princess
Fu
Lu
can
last
be
time.
eradicated.
These people
Lu
were
Qingdi's
trembling.
anger subsided a little.
He was
couldn't even
considering
beg
the
for mercy Yi's ability
because they knew it was useless.
because his body was fine.
In contrast,
he had enough time
Imperial
to do it.
concubine
Emperor
Su's
can
chief
even reveal a
maid
bit
was
of the
dead
plan
silent.
to Jin Qinghuang.
She was lucky to escape
with
last
Wang's
time,
cooperation,
but since then,
it will be twice
she
the
had been
result
living
with
a bad
half the
life.
effort.
It
Wu
wasn't
Qingyi
because
looked at the
Imperial
portrait of the
concubine
Imperial
Su treated her
druid
badly,
and
but because
fell
she
into
knew a
silence
secret
again.
she shouldn't know.
So,
she
the
was
Northwest
in a panic
trip was
all
what you
day
were preparing
long.
to do before.
Now,
since it
she
didn't
even
go
had a
according to
feeling
plan,
that she was finally
you
going
simply
to be
used the
free.
matter of
As
the
for
Imperial
exchanging the
Gui
secret
Fei
she heard
and openly
before
brought it up
for a
herself.
chance to survive
Jing Wan
this
stood in
time,
front of Li
he
Hanyuan
don't have
and grabbed
such
Li
a
Hanyuan's
beautiful
arm.
dream.
She
Right
seemed to be
now,
surprised
she can no
and
longer
excited.
speak.
Say,
Furthermore,
isn't your
she was
brain turning
illiterate.
a little too fast?
Thinking about it,
Everything
How
that can be
ironic
used
was it
by you
that
has
the
been
most
used
important
cleanly.
palace made
You won't
by
let
the
go
imperial
of even the
concubine
slightest
size
chance.
was a
Li
little.
Hanyuan nodded.
Luchengdi finally
Indeed.
looked at Yu
Then,
Zhongqing, who was standing at the door.
Are you interested
Deal with
in
all
going out
these
to capital
people
with me to have
Yes.
fun again?
Even if Yu
As for what
Zhongqing
Jing
heard
Wan
and
said
imperial
after that,
concubine
Li
Su's
Hanyuan
words just
took it
now,
all as a compliment.
he only heard it.
He naturally
Not to mention
accepted
that
his
he was
wife's
secretly
compliments with a
laughing
smile.
at Prince
Jing Wan was not
even if he
surprised
wasn't.
by his words.
This matter had
After
nothing to do
knowing
with it.
everything,
No matter
it
who
would
the
be
person
strange
sitting on the
if he
throne
left her
was,
alone in the
whether it was
capital.
auspicious or not.
Please, it
the
wasn't something
Northwest
he could
is at
comment
war.
on. Can you
All
not
the
say
irrelevant
such a
people
carefree
were
word
taken
like
out.
fun?
Luchengdi
It'll
looked
make
at
people
imperial
angry.
concubine
They'll think
Su
that you don't
coldly.
care about
From
the
now
war
on,
at all,
without
and that
Jin's
you don't
permission,
care about the
you are
lives
not
of many
allowed to
people.
step out of the
It
Jade
will only
Palace.
enter your ears.
Su sure.
Li Hanyuan
You have always been a
pinched
smart
her
person.
earlobe.
If
It's
you
just
don't want
that
to go
going
to the
to the
Northwest
Northwest
will
will
not
not
be
be
as carefree.
Imperial
as going to
concubine
Jiangnan.
Su used
Not to
the
mention other
last of her
things.
strength to
Just the
clench
things
her
that we will
fist.
bring will
Qin
only be
thanks your
simple
majesty
and practical.
for your grace.
One may have to suffer.
Luchengdi,
What's there to feel
snorted
wronged
coldly
about?
and
How
left
could I
with a
feel
flick of
wronged?
his sleeve.
Although I
Thus,
haven't suffered
the
a
three
single
people
bit
who
since
also
I came
knew
to
the
Qiyuan,
secret followed
it doesn't mean that I
Luchengdi
can't suffer
out of the Jade Palace.
At most,
Moreover,
I won't be so extravagant.
It wasn't the first
there
time
won't be any suffering.
Luchengdi met
You won't
Gong
allow
Jiu.
it.
So
Jing
he knew
Wan
a
rubbed
thing
his chin.
or two about his
Even if it's a
temperament.
war, this person
Wan is quite
if it wasn't
happy.
about the illness,
Yes.
he wouldn't
Jing Wan
easily
nodded.
open his mouth.
Although war
Yu
itself
Zhongqing
is
was
not
promoted
something
by
to be
him
happy about,
and was
it is
deeply trusted
indeed
by him.
very happy.
Then there
to
was
be
the
able to go to
head steward
Northwest
beside him,
and
who
really
had been with him for a
experience
long
it.
time.
Of course,
It could be said that
it
he
would
was
be
the
better if
person
there
who
was
had
no
been
war.
with Luchengdi.
If there is no
for the
war,
longest time, there will be
to
no
some
excuse
extent,
to go.
no one had
in
a
my
deeper
heart,
relationship
I still want
with
Wan
him
to go
than
and
Luchengdi.
experience it.
In the Jade
Jing
Palace,
Wan's expression
only Imperial
changed
concubine
slightly.
Su was
Let
left.
you relive your memories.
If it wasn't for the
and let
slight
me have some
rise and
memories
fall
of
of
knowing
a
each
person
other
lying on the bed
yes,
with
but
her
also
breathing,
know.
one
It's
would
not
think
reliving
that she was
but
already
rewriting.
dead.
After
All
a
right,
while,
let the
current
Imperial
Imperial
concubine
concubine
at the very
forced
least
herself to sit up.
I have to cover
She
up the
tidied up her
things that cause you
clothes and
pain.
hair. As for
Although
the
her
things that you
hands
think
were
are
trembling,
beautiful,
they were still
I will be
crossed on her
generous
lap
and not bothered
She
about
quietly
them.
looked ahead.
What was there to be
still
jealous
trying to
of?
maintain her
It was really
dignity
quite
and
meaningless
nobility
to talk about
as an Imperial concubine.
As
she
long as you don't
sat,
want to leave
Imperial
me,
concubine
then it's okay
Su
to be
laughed
calculative.
neurotically.
It's
Li
because
Hanyuan
Wan has me
no
in
matter
her
what your
heart,
purpose
she will be
is,
calculated.
let me go today.
Right?
Come,
Li Hong
I will
Yuan's
make you
voice was
regret it for the
laced with a
rest of your
hint of
life.
laughter.
Originally,
Jing Wan looked
I
up at
raised
him
you
and pulled his face again.
Regardless
You
of
look quite
whether I was
happy, right?
sincere or not.
As you can see,
You have called me
never be
mother for
calculative
so
with a
long.
thick-skinned
I wanted to let you
person.
be an idle
Otherwise,
prince
you
and
will
still
only
have
be
your
angered
honor
to
and
death.
glory.
But is
you
there a
turned out
special
to be
reason
angry
why Yuan
and
insists
even
on
been
going to the Northwest?
Naturally,
Is it just
you
to
can't
take the
blame me for
opportunity to
being
take me
ruthless.
out and have a
Imperial
look? That's one of the
concubine
reasons.
Su laughed
The second
louder
reason
and louder,
is that I want to
and the more
personally
she
kill
laughed,
the
the
Xiong
crazier
Nu
she
virtuous
became.
king. In such
there
a
a
big
grudge?
haul, it was
A
creepy
big
to hear.
grudge.
In my
Luchengdi didn't go
previous
to other
life,
places, but
although
stayed
more than
in the
200,000
Imperial
soldiers
he gave Yu
died
Zhongqing a
innocently.
look.
Yu
It was the
Zhongqing
work of the man
understood
on the throne.
and quickly left
It was
to make
also
sure
because
that
of the
surroundings
Xiong
were
Nu
safe.
virtuous king.
After that,
Later on,
Luchengdi
when I
asked about
ascended
the
the throne,
Hong Yuan
I
situation
fought against him
intermittently,
and
just like a good
losses at
father
his
who
hands.
cared about his son.
Naturally,
Gong Jiu
I want to take the
naturally told him
opportunity
everything
to
he
get
knew.
revenge.
However,
In this life,
in a place that
if he
couldn't
sat
be
on the
seen,
throne again,
Gong Jiu's
Li Hanyuan
fingertips
did
were
not
pressing
intend
on
to
Luchengdi's
personally
wrist.
lead the army
He was
into battle.
multitasking.
Therefore,
However,
the
it took
virtuous
a long
king
time
who
to feel the
personally
pulse.
killed the Xiong Nu
Gong
virtuous
Jiu's
king
eyebrows
only had this
slightly
chance.
frowned as he
Jing
switched
Wan
from
understood.
left hand
Although
to
the
right hand.
virtuous king of the
How
West,
is it,
Xiong Nu
seeing
virtuous
this,
king,
Luchengdi's
was quite
heart
innocent
was in his mouth
and had not done
afraid
anything
that the last
as long as
glimmer
his
of hope
existence
would
was
be
a
shattered.
danger.
In the
Then
end,
he must be eliminated.
Gong Jiu's
As for
eyebrows
his
relaxed.
innocence,
Your Majesty, that
don't
was
worry.
only because
Everything
Prince
is fine.
Jean of the Qi Yuan
Everything is
took
fine.
the initiative.
Luchengdi's
Although
voice
this matter
rose
had
a few
not been
notches,
decided yet,
full of
in Jing
disbelief.
Wan's view,
Your Majesty,
the possibility
it's
of Emperor
true.
Luchengdi, although his
not
Highness's
agreeing was
temper
very
looks
low.
bad,
Therefore,
you know his nature
she began to
better than
prepare in
anyone.
advance.
However,
She had
only
read
a
a
few
lot
people
of
in
travel
the world
books
can
about the
see
Northwest,
so
what
she
others
knew about
see
the local
is just on the
customs
surface
and the current climate.
Those who don't know
it did not
always
matter
like
she
to
did not
use
know
this
about it to scare
scare more
Anyway,
people.
Prince
His
Jin's
Highness
residence
did
innocent.
not lack relevant
Luqingdi
professionals.
naturally understood
Unlike the
that
trip
his
to
so-called
Jiangnan,
poisoning,
all the
was actually
luxurious
just a
and
superficial
exquisite
phenomenon.
things were abandoned.
In essence,
Even
there
the
was
clothes
nothing at
had to be
all.
simple.
It was just that
so
the
that it was
imperial
convenient
physician
to move
he
around.
found didn't see the
Moreover,
problem at all.
on the battlefield,
Luqingdi
perhaps she
recognized
could bring some
Gong's,
medicine,
Zhou's medical
especially
skills.
medicine
But
for
as an
wounds.
emperor, he
In
always
the
had
end,
doubts.
the number of people
In the
who
past,
followed her
he would
not
always
be
ask
as
another
many as
imperial
in Jiangnan.
physician to take a
Now,
look at things.
the only
related to
maids
Gong's
serving
jail.
her were probably
However,
Sister
it was different
Hay
this time.
and Nanny Gong.
He completely
After
believed
calculating,
Gong
it was enough.
Zhou's words.
After all,
even a ninth grade
he was Yuan's
handicapped person
could
and
become
Yuan's
an
biggest
elite with some
reliance was
pressure.
Luqingdi.
As they did not
If his
know about
body
the
was
trip,
really
the
poisoned,
servants were a little
there was no
confused
reason
for
for
his
his
man
man
to
to
hide
hide
Yuan's orders.
Knowing that his body
However,
was fine,
they only needed to
Luqingdi
obey their
clenched
master's
his
orders.
fists.
Sure
In
enough,
this case,
within
it
2
was
days,
time to deal with the person
Emperor
who dared to play
Luke
tricks under his
decree
nose.
came down. I'm relieved
The personnel
to hear that.
assigned to Li
By the way,
Yuan were
since
not
I've
as
entered the palace
luxurious
once,
as when they
it's
went to
convenient
Jiangnan.
for me to
They
have
were
a
more
look.
simple.
Yes, Your
and
Majesty.
the military strength.
After a
was
moment
higher.
of silence,
Jingwan did
Gong
not
Jiu
hide
said,
the things she
Your
ordered.
Majesty's
Some
body
things
is
still
fine.
needed to be purchased.
Ask the imperial physician to prescribe
Basically,
some warm,
some things could be
and
seen
nourishing
from
medicine.
Obviously,
It doesn't need too
this
much.
time was different
At
from the
most,
last
3
trip
doses.
to Jiangnan.
At
They did
most,
not intend
the
to
symptoms
follow
of poisoning
quietly at
would
all
disappear
and only
after
let people
3
know
doses
at the
of
end.
medicine.
It could be
At this
said that
time,
they made a big fuss.
Lu Qingdi was completely
Prince Jean
relieved.
going to take Prince Consort
Gong
Jean?
Jiu,
Many
your
people
medical
found it
skills are
inconceivable.
outstanding at such
Last
a
year
young
in
age.
Jiangnan, the Northwest.
Do you want
was
to enter
full
the
of
Imperial
war.
Hospital?
Taking women
How
there?
about I'll let you take
What
charge
kind of joke
of the
was
Imperial
this?
Hospital?
Lu Qingdi soon
Lu
knew
Qingdi
about
was
it,
attracted
but
to
he
a
didn't
talent
say
like Gong
anything.
Jiu every time
Moreover,
he saw him.
Even if he
This
tried to
time,
stop it,
he
he
couldn't
couldn't
help
help
but
but
think
think
about
about
it.
Since
If
his
Gong
son
Jiu
had
was
already
here,
let others know,
he wouldn't
about
have to be anxious
His
for such a long
attitude
time.
was already very
Your
clear.
Majesty,
The
Your
father and
Highness,
son
as for
wanted
me,
to at least maintain
I'm
their
indebted to Your
relationship
Highness
on
for
the surface.
recognizing my talent.
If he tried to stop
It's up to Your Highness
he didn't
to
know if his
decide
son
where
would
to stay.
directly go against
If you want to
him.
poach me, fine.
Moreover,
you
in
could talk to the
Emperor
master
Lu
of the
Qingdi's
courtyard.
view,
This
his
wall
son
skirt means that I
always
have
needed
no
someone to take
autonomy
care of
at
him.
all.
If it
Lu
was other
Qingdi
women,
was silent.
they might be
At
labeled
this time,
as
he didn't dare to
indulging in
speak
sensual
to his
pleasures.
son.
It
Forget
did not
it.
matter if it
We'll
was
talk
other
about it
places,
later.
but it was
Lu
absolutely
Qingdi
not a
waved
place
his
of
hand.
war.
You can
With
leave
his
the
Wang
palace
Fei,
first.
The mood
Yes,
was
I'll
different.
take my leave.
It was just that
Gong
Emperor
Jiu
Lu
took the
Qingdi
medicine
did
box
not react
and left
but
calmly.
Luo family's
As soon as he
reaction was
left,
a bit big.
Lu
They
Qingdi's
naturally
face
approved of a
changed
place
again.
like Jiangnan.
Have I been
But
too
what was
kind
the situation
in
in
the
the Northwest
in
now?
this palace?
Was it a place
Someone
where
dares
a
to play
woman
with me?
could
Your
easily
Majesty.
set foot?
Even
Fortunately,
Prince Jean,
the people
could
of
really
Prince
go to the
Jin's
battlefield,
mansion are skilled,
let alone
and didn't let
Prince
the behind-the-scenes
Consort
person
Jean.
succeed.
However,
when the
Lu
two countries
Qingdi
were at war,
snorted coldly.
both sides would eliminate
Before,
a lot of spies.
he was afraid of breaking
and there might be
vases,
spies
but
that
now
now
he
he
had
had
no
no scruples.
If she,
a
Yu
prince
Qing,
consort,
Your
appeared,
Majesty,
wouldn't be
Yu
a living
Zhongqing
target
quickly
for these
appeared
people,
and
so
stood
they did not
respectfully
agree
in front
They
of
firmly
Lu
did
Qingdi.
not agree.
Lu
Old
Qingdi
Madame
whispered
Luo
a few words,
and Zhang
and Yu
Shi
Zhongqing
not
took
sit
the
still
order
and
left.
directly went to Prince
Gong
Jin's
Jiu
food
didn't
to
stay
see
long
Jingwan.
behind Li Han
Zhang
Yuan.
Shi was a
So it didn't
typical
take
person
long for him to
made
catch
of
up with the
water.
carriage of Prince
Although she had
Jin's
not been
mansion.
sad for a
After
long
returning to
time,
Prince
but
Jin's
at this
mansion,
moment,
Li
her
Han
eyes were
Yuan
like a
looked
flood
indifferent.
breaking.
There was no
through a
trace
dam.
of the emotion
Usually,
he had in Jade
old Madame
Palace.
Luo
Gong
hated
Jiu
Zhang Shi
saw
the
it.
most.
He wasn't
But this
sure
time,
if his master
she
already
felt
knew
that her
about
tears
it,
were not
or he
useless.
hid it in his heart.
Therefore,
Didn't want
when
Princess
Jingwan had
to
a
find
headache
out.
and comforted
However,
Zhang Shi,
no matter
she
which
sat
one
on
it
one
was,
side. In short,
Zhang Shi
the fact
could
that his
not
master
be
was a
comforted,
devil
and
must
Jingwan
not
was
be
too
leaked out
lazy
from
to
his
say
mouth.
anything.
In fact, according to
she
his
directly
master's
looked
temper,
at old Madame
this matter
Luo.
wouldn't affect him
Grandmother,
at all.
this
No
time,
matter what his background
no matter
was,
it
I
couldn't
will
stop
go.
him from doing
So,
what he wanted to do.
I asked grandmother
because
to
the
help me this
matter
time.
wasn't over.
Forgive
Granddaughter
granddaughter
for
naturally
being
followed him to the
unfilial.
main courtyard.
Old Madame
You're
Luo
back.
frowned.
How's the
Jingwan
situation?
was raised by
when
her.
Jingwan saw
And
them,
old Madame
she
Luo
put down the
was
scissors
very
in her hand
clear about
and
Jingwan's
washed her
temperament.
hands. Some
Li
things had
Yuan
already
pulled
been
Gong
decided,
Jiu to sit down
and then
on
even
one
9
side.
bulls could
First,
not pull her back.
he briefly explained the
Wang,
matter of Jade
have you really
Palace.
decided?
Although he didn't
Yes,
say it clearly,
grandmother. Jingwan
in that
understood
case,
what he meant.
I will not
Her
persuade
eyes were
you,
full of surprise.
and I will not ask why
Did you do
insist on
something?
going.
A person
But you
like
must send
noble
letters
consort
back
often
often
to
can't
let us
lose
know that
control
you're
of her
safe.
emotions
In
so
the end,
easily.
Madame
Right?
Luo was
Not
a
to mention
reasonable person.
speaking without
She knew that she
thinking.
couldn't persuade
As the saying
her,
goes,
so she didn't
the
say any
onlooker
harsh words.
sees more clearly.
Li Han
Some
Yuan
words,
was slightly stunned.
although in essence,
Yes, that
were
woman
good in order to keep
absolutely
people.
couldn't be underestimated.
Once spoken,
How
it
could
would
she
also
lose
be very
control to
hurtful.
that extent
Yes,
after being stabbed
grandmother,
by her?
I will.
So his eyes fell on
Jingwan
Gong
chuckled.
Jiu.
Mother,
Gong Jiu
Zhang Shi was
immediately
stunned.
knelt down.
This
on
was
one
different
knee.
from what they had agreed.
Your Highness, didn't they
Please
say that
forgive
they
me.
would make Wang?
I've been studying some
Wang
drugs
stay no
recently.
matter what. Okay, don't cry.
Before entering the palace,
Don't you think it's bad
I just
luck to
habitually
cry
put some
all
on my
day
body.
long?
This
Old Madame
drug
Luo
is
said in a
usually
bad mood.
useless to people.
Zhang Shi choked.
But when people's
Don't
emotions
think that
are
I didn't see it
abnormal,
before.
They will be affected
Old Madame
to different
Luo
degrees
clearly
and become
approved of
somewhat
crying.
uncontrollable.
How long had it
have been.
If the will
And now
is
she
slightly
changed her
weak,
mind.
they will
Zhang
speak
Shi felt
and
very
act
wrong.
according to their true
But since old
emotions.
Madame Luo
So,
did not allow
it was
her
really
to
just an
cry,
accident.
Zhang Shi did
However,
not dare to
for
cry
Li Han
anymore.
Yuan,
However,
accidents
she
that were
cried
not
for
in his
too
control
long,
and
no matter
too
the final
fiercely.
result was good or
For a
bad.
while, she
were
could not
allowed.
stop sobbing.
She felt
Especially
very
when it was caused
uncomfortable
by his own people,
and so did others.
Explain what happened
Jingwan
later,
called the servant
and then go to
girls
receive
take
the punishment.
Zhang Shi down
Yes,
to
sir.
wash her face.
Gong Jiu
and
explained
apply her
everything
eyes.
in detail.
Otherwise,
and then
her
excused
eyes would be
himself.
very uncomfortable.
So, if this
the
continued
emperor
for
should
a
have been
long time.
coerced.
Old
But
Madame
now there's
Luo
no need to
did
worry
not
about the
persuade her
consequences.
anymore.
Old
person
Madame
who played the
Luo
trick
carefully
carefully
observed some things.
That has nothing to do with
Although
us.
Jingyuan knew a
Li
lot of
Hanyuan
it,
had no
she knew that
interest
this
in
was her
caring about his
grandmother's
father's
love
feelings.
and care.
What about the
She
original
listened carefully
follow-up plan?
and expressed
We still need
that
to
she
use
would
it?
pay attention.
The imperial
at all
noble
times.
consort's
Later,
religious
Li
ceremony
Hanyuan also
should be
came.
done sooner,
Obviously,
rather than
Old
later.
Madame Luo
The original
would not
plan
give him face
should
at
be
this time.
postponed.
He knew
So,
that if it was
let's
not
do
his
the religious
intention,
ceremony
his
first.
granddaughter would not
As for
go.
him,
Therefore,
since he's fine,
the source was
there's
still
no need
Jinxin
to involve
Wang.
him.
However,
I believe that the
because of her
imperial noble
identity
consort
and also
doesn't want to be
taking
involved
Jingyuan
with
into
him
consideration,
unless it's necessary.
Old Madame Luo's attitude
Well, we'll do as
was
you
a little
say.
cold.
Speaking of
but her
which,
words were not
there was a
bad at
reason
all.
why it took
Li
so
Hanyuan
long
knew very
to
well
complete.
what kind of treatment
Although
he would
Lu
receive
Qingdi
if he
attached
came.
great
However,
importance to this project,
he guessed that Old Madame
and sent
Luo
people to each
would have
altar.
something to say to him,
And Li Hanyuan also
at the same
took the
time,
opportunity to
because
place
he knew
many
that the
people
other
there,
party
because there
was
were too many
completely
altars.
for Jingyuan.
There would always be
It did
people
not
who would
matter
do
if he
everything
received
possible
cold
to destroy
face.
them.
Whatever
Naturally,
Old Madame
there would be
Luo
times
said,
when it was
he would
impossible
obediently
to guard
listen
against, and be an
so the
ordinary
construction period would be
grandson-in-law.
delayed.
Although
Because
Old
the
Madame
general
Luo
progress
was
had to
still
be
worried about
constant,
Jingyuan's
and the final
future,
completion
for now,
had to be completed.
she was
at the
very
same
satisfied
time.
with Li
The
Hanyuan.
progress of each
This
altar had to be
grandson-in-law.
summarized.
Although
at
she
all
did not
times.
have as deep
one
a
place was
relationship with her
delayed,
other granddaughters,
another place was
as
delayed,
Jingyuan, and
it was
one
not
place
that
was
she did
delayed.
not care.
When one place
Thinking
was
about it,
delayed, all the other
80
grandson-in-laws
places were
added
delayed
together
as well.
could not compare
The construction
to this one.
started on the
It was the
2nd
same in all
of
aspects.
February.
In
and the
fact,
auspicious
when it came
day
to the
for
status
final
of
completion of the
son-in-law and
altars was chosen
grandson-in-law,
in late
other than the
August.
benefits,
It took more
the
than
status
half a
of the
year,
Yu family,
and the
was
effort
inversely
spent was more than
proportional
expected
to everything else.
It can only be said that there
The
were
higher
more
the
people
status,
than
the
expected,
more
and
unsatisfactory
they didn't want
it
this
was.
matter to be
After all,
completed perfectly.
because of their high status,
in the end,
there were
it was
many
because
things
of
that they
Lu
did not
Qingdi's
have to worry
toughness that it
about
could be
and may
completed.
not treat their
If
own
it weren't
daughter
for him,
well.
Li
If their status
Hanyuan
was low,
might not be able
there
to
would always
achieve
be
his goal
some
no matter
fear
how much
when
he did
doing
certain
secret
things.
After all,
However,
the scope
Li
involved
Hanyuan
was
was
good
good
to
to
Jingyuan,
Jingyuan,
and it was too difficult for Li Hanyuan
as a
to
member of the
control it all.
Luo family.
Li Hanyuan
Sometimes they felt a little
embarrassed. After sending off
Lu
Old
Qingdi
Madame
saw
Luo,
that the handwriting
because
on
Li
the memorial
Hongyuan's
had become
attitude
as
was
plain as
unusually
before,
good, and it was
Jingyuan
no
was
longer as
very
outstanding
intimate
and
with him for a
handsome
while.
as when
Therefore,
he was in high
who
spirits
said that
when he got
Jin
married.
Shin Wang would
Lu Qingdi
definitely
couldn't
be
help
wrong,
but feel distressed.
Perhaps they were scheming again.
Before,
Li
when he didn't know
Hanyuan
about
used the
it,
excuse
he
that the
restrained
Imperial
himself
Gue
because
phase
he
matter
sensed his intention
could not be delayed
now that he knew
and
about
left
it.
in a hurry.
Was he really going
Lu
to keep
Qingdi
quiet
naturally
completely?
did not have any
Lu Qingdi's head
objections,
hurt, but there
he
were
didn't
some
know what
things
to
that he
do.
wanted to instruct him.
Moreover, he couldn't
However,
ask his
Li
ministers about
Hanyuan
it.
was not
After
summoned,
all,
and
the fewer people
this
who
kind of
knew
thing
about it,
could
the
not be
better.
spoken to by a
In other
third
words,
party.
the
Let
fewer
alone
people
leave
who
something
knew
like a
that he
secret
killed
edict.
the Imperial
Therefore,
noble consort, the
he could
better.
only entrust
If no
this
one
matter
mentioned it to Li
he might be
Suyan.
able to continue
Ever since the horse
deceiving
farm
himself.
was built,
However,
Jingyuan would ride
Lu
the
Qingdi
horse
knew
from time
very
to time.
well that
Perhaps it was
Hanyuan
because
had
Li
known about
Hanyuan
it.
already
If he
had
really
a
wanted to
plan
gloss
and
it
did
over,
not limit it
he
to
would be
Jingyuan
ruthlessly
running on flat roads.
exposed just by looking
Jingyuan's
into his
current
eyes.
equestrian skills
Moreover,
were not very
he didn't
good.
dare to see
But
his
as
son
long
now.
as she did not
Yes,
let
he didn't
loose
dare to.
and the road was
He was
not
afraid
that
of his
rugged,
son's question.
Jingyuan's speed
Therefore,
could basically
he wanted
keep
to
up.
bury the hatchet
It was not
with his
certain if
son,
she would still
but
get
he didn't want to
carsick
face
from
it.
sitting in a carriage.
There was a
But
strong
most of the time,
contradiction in his
Jingyuan
heart.
would follow the
However,
horse.
his son might
Although
not
riding
see
for a
him,
long time
so he
might
let it be
cause
for the
some
time
suffering.
being.
She had already
wrote
prepared
a
for
big
this.
permission.
The medicine
on
had already been
Hongyuan's
prepared.
memorial. When
And
she
at the same
rested at
time,
night,
he
she
gave
would
full
apply the
power
medicine
to Li
and
Hanyuan to
continue
deal
the
with
next
this
day.
matter.
When she
Li
really
Hanyuan
could not bear it
could
anymore,
use anyone
she
he
would take
wanted,
the carriage to
and he didn't
prevent
even
her
need to
body
submit
from
a
having
memorial
problems.
and
This matter
slowing
was
down the
even
journey.
mentioned in the
Li
Imperial
Hanyuan had
court.
never
In
stopped
other
letting the
words,
Ministry of
he gave Li
Works remodel the
Hanyuan
carriage.
considerable power,
so far,
which would
never
never
happen
happen
under
under
normal circumstances.
In addition to the meticulous
Some ministers
arrangement,
wanted to persuade
although
him,
the carriage
but they were
was
scolded
not
by
as
Lu
spacious
Qingdi
and
as soon
exquisite
as they opened
as
their
Li
mouths.
Hongyuan's
In
carriage
particular,
that symbolized
the
his
ministers
identity.
seemed to be related
the
to
comfort
the
was
Su
not
family,
much worse,
which aroused
now that she
Lu
was not
Qingdi's
as resentment
Karsic as before.
against imperial
It was
noble
not
consort
unbearable.
With
Therefore,
regards to
Lu
Jingyuan's
Qingdi
degree
directly
of
took his
delegateness,
anger out on him.
The people of
Stripped him
Jin
of his
Wang Fu
official
had all
uniform,
seen it.
and
they
threw
were
him
actually a
out of
little
the
worried
Imperial
about this
Palace.
trip.
But the
Seeing
facts
this,
showed that she had
the others
once
thought
again
that they had
exceeded
touched
their
Lu
expectations.
Chendi's bottom line,
especially Gong
so they
Jiu.
kept quiet
He
out
could
of
not help
fear
but think of
and
the
didn't
scene
dare
by
to say a
Long
word about
Temple,
it.
where he
After
saw
learning
her taking
this,
care of
Li
Hong
Hongyuan
Yuan
smiled.
At that time,
his smile was a
he
little
felt that she did not
sarcastic
seem
and
like a
little
noble
gloomy.
lady from a
Since
noble
such an
family.
opportunity was
Now,
given to him,
she also did
he
not
would
seem
naturally
like a
make
Wang
use
Fei
of it
that was
openly
piled up with gold
and take the
and jade by
opportunity
master.
to
At one
consolidate
time,
the forces
they were
under his
dissatisfied
command.
with Jing
because no one
although
believed
it was
that Li
only in their
Hongyuan
hearts
could do
because
anything
Master
in a short
could
period
not
of
do
time.
without her.
No one would
They
suspect
only hoped
anything,
that she would not
even if
be
Li
a burden.
Hongyuan met someone
However,
or gave
the facts
orders
prove
as a matter
that
of course.
this Wang Fei
As
was
insiders,
always able to go
they
beyond their
inexplicably felt a
expectations.
sense of
In their
superiority.
There
as
was
a
no one
prophet.
more suitable
They only
than her
hoped
to
that
be
when some
Qin
people found
Qin
out
Wang's
later,
existence.
they wouldn't feel that
Not
they
only
had
would she
been
not
fooled
be a
too
burden
badly
when they
needed,
thought back to
she could
today.
also completely
However,
stand up.
those who would think
support
this
the
way
situation
were those who were
and
still
help
alive.
Master, because they could mobilize a large
Not to mention
number
the
of people
others,
openly,
especially those
many
who would
things
follow
would go
them to
smoothly.
Jiangnan. The delicate appearance of Jin Xinhuang's Wang Fei could be said to be fresh in their minds. So when they saw Jingwan most of the time, she was capable and experienced, riding with them, and did not need to slow down in order to take care of her. They all doubted whether this person was really Jin Xinhuang's Wang Fei. Could it be that one really could not judge a book by its cover? Not only that, this Wang Fei was amazing. The people who served her were also not the least bit lacking. Not to mention that servant girl who seemed to be trained, that mama who looked to be in her 40s or 50s. Her horse riding skills seemed to be above most of them all, making them, this group of big men, feel ashamed and unable to show their faces. Along the way, when they stopped to rest, Jingwan also consciously began to practice the hand crossbow. In addition, Li Hanyuan also equipped her with the sleeve arrows that were usually used by secret guards. Although he was confident that he could protect Jingwan's safety, there was never a lack of contingencies in the world. Therefore, it was not a bad thing for Jingwan to have some self-defense skills. They arrived 2 days earlier than expected. Although they were at Lu Chengbi's place for the imperial noble consort's matter, it was not easy to announce it. At least, it could not be known to the people in the northwest. Moreover, Li Hanyuan had the title of inspecting the army, so naturally, he was the first to arrive at the front line. Jingwan was arranged to stay in the city first. Because they had been informed in advance, they had already made arrangements. However, because there was a battle ahead, they did not see Fu Yunting and the others. Jingwan did not care. She could not set foot in the camp where the army was stationed, so she safely settled down in the courtyard in the city. She would rest for a while before making plans. Most of the people were left behind. Li Hanyuan only brought a few people and went directly to the army camp to see Fu Yunting. Because the imperial court had sent a prince to supervise the army, and he was the one with the worst reputation, there were many generals. Those who had followed Fu Yunting were only a minority. These people knew Li Hanyuan very well, and the others had also heard of him. Therefore, they were very nervous. These people were not afraid of war. They were only afraid of being cheated. However, when they really saw Li Hanyuan, those who knew him were still fine. Those who did not know him were completely stunned by Li Hongyuan's appearance and temperament. Sinister and ruthless, temperamental, drinking human blood, eating human flesh. This kind of person, even if he did not have 3 heads and 6 arms, he should have a sinister face like a yiksha. In the end, he was incomparably handsome, noble, and graceful. If one were to say that he was a god from the 9th heaven, there would be people who would believe it. However, this kind of shock could not be maintained for more than a few breaths. Li Hanyuan flung the horsewhip in his hand. His eyes were sharp and cold, clearly telling these people that Jin Xinhuang was not as terrifying as they imagined, but he was definitely not as harmless as the first impression. Fu Yunting led the way to the main tent. Was he looking for trouble the moment he arrived? The people behind Fu Yunting looked at each other in dismay, but did not dare to say anything, asking Wang Ye to follow this humble one. Fu Yunting's expression did not change as he led the way in front. Yu Zhongqing, Li Suyin, and Imperial bodyguard Qian followed. The others were on standby. Opening the tent door, Li Hanyuan directly sat on the main seat. What is the situation now? Fu Yunting discreetly glanced at Li Suyin and Yu Zhongqing. Some thoughts flashed through his mind. Then he started to explain on the sand table. Li Hanyuan listened silently from beginning to end, until Fu Yunting finished. Only then did he ask a few questions. It could be said that every word was a gem. Every sentence hit the nail on the head. From the beginning of the war until now, Li Hanyuan had given Fu Yunting pointers several times through letters. Therefore, Fu Yunting knew that Li Hanyuan also had considerable attainments in military strategy. It was just that, when they were face to face, that kind of pressure suddenly increased by countless levels. That feeling was like a small soldier facing a decisive war god who had led the army for decades. There was even sweat on his forehead. Fu Yunting's heart was filled with fear and admiration. On the surface, he appeared to be careful, but he realized that there were many areas where he did not think things through thoroughly. He felt ashamed and focused 120%, memorizing them one by one. Speaking of which, actually, Li Hongyuan's narrow-mindedness acted up again. It was just that it was not good to deal with Fu Yunting openly, so naturally he started from other aspects to absolutely suppress Fu Yunting. Although under his suppression, Fu Yunting might become stronger and stronger, but that was not what Li Hongyuan wanted. After all, in the future, Fu Yunting would have to work hard for him. If Fu Yunting was not strong enough, how could he fight for his country? The few of them stayed in the tent for a long time, and the people outside were waiting impatiently. Speaking of which, Fu Yunting could be said to have the support of the masses. His prestige was very high, and the generals were very convinced. With such a person like him, the generals naturally did not want him to be suppressed or even humiliated because of his status. But after all, the other party was a prince and came under the emperor's orders. They could not do anything, and if they did, it might even bring trouble to him. It could be said that when they were anxiously waiting, he finally came out. Everyone hurriedly saluted, "Greetings, Your Highness." Li Hongyuan was expressionless, but he was well aware of it. Therefore, it was reasonable. A general who was respected and loved by the soldiers was a qualified general. Only this way could he lead the soldiers to more victories. Li Hongyuan prepared to leave the military camp, but someone stood up. "This general is unruly. Please show Your Highness the imperial edict. https://11/11/11807/128095546." Chapter 500. Li Hongyuan's cold eyes swept over, making people feel chills all over their bodies. Fu Yunting saw that something was wrong and subconsciously stood in front of that general. After he finished, he realized that his reaction was too big, but he could only brace himself. "Wang, please forgive me." Li Hongyuan was expressionless. General Fu is very protective of his subordinates, but Ben Wang is not a scourge or ferocious beast. Could it be that Ben Wang will eat him? Fu Yunting's scalp went numb. The main reason was that the psychological shadow that Jin Wang gave him was too big. It simply became an instinctive reaction. "Wang, please forgive me." Li Hongyuan coldly snorted. "As the commander-in-chief of an army, you are really promising." Fu Yunting's face was slightly hot. Fortunately, it was a few months of eating and sleeping in the open. His skin was already tanned and rough, so it was not very visible. Otherwise, the dignity that he had built up over the past few months would have collapsed at this moment. There was no other way. Facing anyone, he would not be like this. Right now, he was just stubbornly holding on. "Okay." Li Hongyuan tapped the horsewhip in his hand with his other hand and looked at Fu Yunting meaningfully before leaving. Fu Yunting only felt his scalp go numb. Even a scourge or ferocious beast was not this terrifying. If he could, he really did not want to face Jin Wang. Even if he used other methods to torment him, it was still better than this kind of face-to-face. Imperial Guard Qian stepped forward and took out the imperial edict that he carried with him, directly handing it over. Letting people kneel to receive the imperial edict and whatnot, forget it. General does not need to be so nervous. It is just official business. Wang will not be angry and naturally will not do anything. But even if Wang forgot about this matter, it should be General's matter. If your subordinates speak up, it will inevitably be suspected of overstepping your authority. Wang is a person who follows the rules. This will also make Wang question General's ability to manage the army. The living king of hell was someone who followed the rules? These words were probably only spoken by the people around him. Many thanks for the reminder. As long as it was not Li Hongyuan, Fu Yunting regained his calm. Imperial bodyguard Qian nodded, cupped his hands, and left. It was only after Li Hongyuan and his entourage had all left that the people present wiped the non-existent sweat from their foreheads and breathed a sigh of relief. Jin Wang's imposing manner was truly terrifying. "General, did Jin Wang say anything?" Under normal circumstances, people like the army supervisor were not very well liked. Under normal circumstances, if the imperial court had enough trust, why would they send an army supervisor? Moreover, there were some supervisors who came down to snatch the credit. Just this alone, for the sake of the overall situation, it wasn't that they couldn't tolerate it. However, they were afraid that these people would recklessly interfere with the military affairs. They clearly didn't understand, and yet they still blindly gave orders. This would lead to immeasurable tragic consequences. Knowing that there would be no problem with the imperial edict, Fu Yunting still looked at it symbolically. I know what you're worried about. Don't worry, what you are thinking will not happen. If that's the case, you're naturally the best. But what's the purpose of this bodhisattva? In fact, Fu Yunting also wanted to know why Li Honyuan was here. Was it because he wasn't at ease with this war, so he came to personally take a look? However, no matter what, according to Jin Xinhuang's ability, the advantages of the war far outweighed the disadvantages. The so-called disadvantages, Fu Yunting was a little embarrassed and felt that it was probably concentrated on him. Therefore, no matter what, this mentality must be adjusted well and absolutely couldn't be removed because of his own reasons. General, then do you want to hold a welcoming banquet for Wang Ye? Another old general asked. There's no need for a welcoming banquet. Not to mention the tension of the war, it's Wang Ye's first time here. I'm afraid many things are not to his taste. Fu Yunting said it tactfully. Those who didn't know deeply agreed, and those who knew rubbed their nose and didn't say anything. With Jin Xinhuang's degree of extravagance and pickiness, they really couldn't afford it here. They didn't want to spend so much effort to hold a banquet, but in the end, they left on bad terms. When Li Honyuan returned to the city, Jingwan had already woken up from her nap. Her spirit had more or less recovered. For the time being, the city hadn't been affected by the war. But after all, it was the northwest border. Naturally, it couldn't be compared to the capital and Jiangnan's prosperity, but it still had its own local characteristics. The buildings were relatively cold and hard, and the color scheme leaned towards the cold. However, because it was prepared for the Qinhuang to live in, it was still well prepared. The people in the residence might not be very polite, but they abided by the rules and had a sense of propriety. Jingwan wasn't unaccustomed to it. As for Li Honyuan, in fact, he wasn't extravagant on normal days. When it was necessary, he could adapt to any environment. It was just that after seeing the layout of the residence, he was still very dissatisfied. He doubted that bringing his wife to the northwest, was it wrong? Or should he have brought more things like when he went to Jiangnan? But this was just a thought. If he really did it, Wang would be hated by who knows how many people. But when he saw that Jingwan was adapting well, Li Hongyuan's brows slightly relaxed. Jingwan chuckled and stretched out her finger to rub Li Hongyuan's eyebrows. I'm fine. Li Honyuan also laughed. Yes, how could he forget that his wife wouldn't be easily bought over by external things? The reason why she calmly accepted everything he gave was because she first accepted him from the bottom of her heart. The only thing that could buy her was never external things, but sincerity. You went to the barracks to take a look. How is the situation? It's just SOSO. It didn't meet expectations, but it didn't disappoint too much. Fu Yunting is still lacking after all. I just need to train him again. His tone was faint, but his eyes were looking at her. Jingwan almost laughed, but in the end, she held back. If she laughed, she didn't know what this man would do. However, she and Fu Yunting didn't even have a face-to-face photo. Did he have to be like this? Jingwan really wanted to say, you're just looking for trouble if you keep bringing up your past life. All right, she couldn't say that. Yes, it's his honor to be trained by Yuan personally. Li Hongyuan's eyes were cold. He reached out and pinched Jingwan's face. Don't think that I don't know what you're thinking, but I'm too lazy to argue with you now. Just wait, I'll record it down one by one. We'll slowly settle it when we return to the capital. Jingwan rolled her eyes at him. This narrow-minded man. Li Honyuan took Jingwan to walk around the garden. There wasn't much to admire, so the topic naturally turned to the situation in the northwest. Jingwan asked the question in her heart. Yuan, in your previous life, the Qi Yuan suffered heavy losses. According to the fierceness of the Xiongnu, they should have directly attacked the Qi Yuan. However, from what I've heard, the Qi Yuan is in trouble and the Xiongnu have directly withdrawn their troops. I told you the same thing. There's an internal problem in the western Xiongnu. The virtuous king's power is getting stronger and stronger, and some people have the idea of plucking the fruits of their labor. In addition, this winter, there's a rare, heavy snow in the north. The area near the Qiyuan is quite serious, not to mention the areas further north. The nomadic people's main property is cattle, sheep, and other livestock. A large number of people have died, so in order to survive, they naturally have to plunder. The former Wei and the Xiongnu are all disaster areas, so the Xiongnu don't have much energy to invest in the Qiyuan. Moreover, the Xiongnu themselves are not a rich land. To be able to fight against the Qiyuan for a year, their reserves are almost depleted. Even the cleverest housewife can't cook without rice. Jingwan understood. In other words, the Xiongnu did not have the right time, place, and people. They had no choice but to retreat when they had such a great opportunity. She wondered if the virtuous king was so angry that he vomited blood. Therefore, although the Qiyuan could be said to be besieged on all sides, it had a lot of luck. This had created favorable conditions for someone to establish a more powerful dynasty in the future. And now, he had the advantage of foresight in certain aspects. If there were no accidents, the Qiyuan in his hands in the future would be more powerful and prosperous than the one in his previous life. Jingwan did not have much ambition, but when she thought about such a prosperous era, which was created by her husband, she could not help but feel excited and proud. If we eliminate the virtuous king now, won't it be easier to deal with the Xiongnu in the future? Of course, but there are many things that cannot be generalized. After all, without the virtuous king, the internal conflicts among the Xiongnu would be reduced. If the Xiongnu retreated early to recuperate, then they would be able to preserve some of their accumulation. When they attack again in the future, they would be united as one. Hearing this, Jingwan was not nervous. She believed that he had a follow-up plan. So, not only do we have to eliminate the virtuous king, we have to completely destroy the Xiongnu, just like the northern Xiongnu in the past. You have to know that the northern Xiongnu and the western Xiongnu were rivals in the past. Because of the battle with the Qiyuan, the northern Xiongnu were far inferior to the western Xiongnu until today. Not to mention, during this period of time, the western Xiongnu had plundered a large amount of territory. Destroy them to the point that they will be exterminated. Jingwan finished his sentence. Li Hanyuan turned to look at Jingwan and smiled. Wan, you are quite ambitious. Jingwan turned to look at him. What was he talking about? It was obviously this bastard who had led her to say this. Li Hanyuan held her hand, their fingers intertwined, and continued walking at a moderate pace. If the Xiongnu are completely defeated, the one on the throne will not have the chance to find trouble with Fu Yunting openly. Even if the emperor has great achievements, he will not dare to act recklessly against such a meritorious official. If that's the case, according to the Su family's plan, the emperor will be even more restless. Others will not do anything to him, but he will be worried to death. What does that have to do with us? Li Hanyuan was unusually calm. To be honest, the more worried Lu Qingdi was, the happier he would be. Therefore, Lu Qingdi was a failure as a husband, a failure as a father, and an even greater failure as an emperor. We can only take this matter slowly. But how should we deal with the imperial noble consort? Is it really because of the war? Whether it is or not, we will know when we go to the spell altar tomorrow. How far is the nearest spell altar? It is less than 100 miles away from this city. It is the only spell altar in the 5 counties inside and outside Heaven's Gate. There are 80 places with good feng shui. Is the Northwest such a small proportion of the land? It is not strange. Throughout history, after many dynasties, how many have built a capital city in this area? Well, in the past history of Qiyuan, there was no such thing. Moreover, a capital city was very important to a country. If it was to be built, it really needed to be considered in all aspects. Shall I ask someone to prepare it? No, I will go there. Anyway, it is a secret. If you are here, won't you be able to cover for me better? Jingwan raised her eyebrows. She suspected that he was up to no good. Don't worry. I will go there early tomorrow morning. I will be back tomorrow. Jingwan really had nothing to worry about. Okay, you go. I will also take the opportunity to understand the situation in the city and see if there is anything I can help with. She could not only help. Li Hongyuan thought of his previous life. Because of his situation at that time, he did not know what Jingwan did. But later on, he learned that Fu Yunting could hold on for more than a year under the situation of internal and external troubles. How much credit did Jingwan have for Jingwan? It was the same-er. Although she appeared here in a different way, he believed that what she would do in the future would be the same. Moreover, now that her status was different, her words would be carried out more vigorously in the beginning. In this way, the princess consort would definitely do better than the general's wife. However, in reality, would it really be like this? Jingwan had personally asked for the provisions and personally escorted them. She had already gained support with her own abilities. In addition, Fu Yunting had gained the respect of the soldiers and citizens of the Northwest. Whatever Jingwan wanted to do, many people would unconditionally believe her. How could her words not be carried out? On the contrary, the current princess consort, in these people's impression, was that she did not know pain and suffering. She only knew how to enjoy life and did not know anything. She was a noble lady who needed people to serve her. 9 out of 10 of her words would be doubted. So, the princess consort was the general's wife? Haha, let's not talk about the end. In the beginning, it was definitely impossible. How could Li Hongyuan not know this? Wrong. It was because he knew it very clearly. So he was being petty. Jingwan didn't know what he was thinking. She was still telling him what she could do to help. The more Li Hongyuan listened, the darker his face became. According to Jingwan's words, she would probably be busier than him. The time they spent together would be infinitely reduced. Your husband brought you here to play. Suddenly hearing Li Hongyuan's cold and harsh words, Jingwan was stunned. Then she did not know whether to laugh or cry. Yuan, don't make a fuss. What time is it now? Are you really bringing me here to play? Actually, you know best in your heart. So, at this point, don't make a fuss. Hearing Jingwan's last adjective, Li Hongyuan's face became even darker. However, it was undeniable that Jingwan was right. The living Hell King was in a bad mood and did not want to continue walking. He pulled his wife back to rest. After all, for a long time after this, he was afraid that he would not be able to eat his fill. Jingwan was severely tormented, but the next day, she still woke up full of energy. However, Li Hongyuan had already left. Jingwan's morning exercise was not canceled. On the contrary, it was increased to a certain extent. Moreover, it was not only physical exercise, but also hand crossbows and arrows. Although she did not see the cruelty of the battlefield, and probably would not see it, but as it neared, she could not help but feel a sense of danger. When Jingwan heard it, she was already sweating profusely. Even in the summer, Jingwan rarely sweated so much. However, everyone saw Jingwan's efforts. Granny Gong also consciously taught Jingwan some boxing skills. Jingwan herself might not know, but the secret guards hiding in the dark knew very well. Those were the killing moves that were more skillful. They did not require too much strength and were not harmful to the body. Most people might find it difficult to learn, but Jingwan's body was very flexible and balanced because she had been training since she was a child. Therefore, it was very easy for her to learn. Those who knew Granny Gong's identity looked at each other. Was it really okay for the Lady Protector to do this? In fact, unless they were all dead, how could the princess consort fight with others personally? But would there be a day when they were all dead? What a joke. If someone could kill them all with such a group of sneaky soldiers, not to mention that the capital would be pierced into a sieve, at least there would be an assassination case from time to time. It was not easy to kill them in the capital. There were many governors in all the counties. So, the Lady Protector was teaching the princess consort so that she could fight with the prince? All right, she had accidentally exposed herself. She had better stop quickly. If she accidentally revealed her emotions, wouldn't she be courting death? Jingwan washed up and had breakfast. Then, she put on a set of clean clothes and went out with her men. Speaking of which, although she did not wear a fancy dress or exquisite hair accessories tonight, the material of her clothes was very different from the clothes of the people in the Northwest. Therefore, she attracted a lot of attention when she went out on the street. However, the customs here were quite good. Most people just took a look and then left. They did not cause unnecessary trouble. Besides, they could more or less guess that Jingwan's identity was not simple. Although there were not many people around Jingwan, there were still some unfamiliar figures around her. When the two countries were at war, as a border town, they were very sensitive to unfamiliar faces. Therefore, even though many people were wearing the local clothes and mingling with the crowd to protect Jingwan, they did not achieve their real goal. This was probably something that Imperial bodyguard Qian and the others did not expect. However, they were different. After going through special training, they were able to see through other people's eyes. Therefore, after a while, they would definitely notice something. Therefore, this mistake would not last long. However, Jingwan was upright and magnanimous. No matter what she did, if she had doubts, she would ask. If she did not understand, she would ask. If she inadvertently offended someone, she would apologize very straightforwardly. This kind of attitude would not cause others to be dissatisfied. Speaking of which, because the purpose of Jin Xinhuang's visit was unclear and they did not know where to start, many people were actually staring at Jingwan. Of course, this kind of thing could not be done by a man. Wouldn't that be offending Jin Xinhuang to death? Don't forget, this was originally a prefectural city. The number of officials here was not small. These officials all had family members. Because of the war, civil officials were also used as facial features. They did not have to go to the battlefield. Their feet did not touch the ground all day long. They even had frequent contact with soldiers. Their bodies were even infected with some of the habits of the military. Following that, the people and their families were also affected. What's more, in the Northwest, the customs were originally relatively open. Especially for women, the restrictions were much weaker. Compared to being a housewife, some of them were able to wield the whip with vigor and vigor. Perhaps because they knew the worries of the elders and their families, they were also worried about the soldiers. Therefore, some of the young ladies volunteered to go and check out the situation. Jingwan going out at this time was a good opportunity for them. It was just that they did not show up at the beginning and only watch from afar. Because the unfamiliar faces in the crowd were also centered around Jingwan, they did not call the city guards. However, this kind of situation actually had a certain drawback, because during this time, they could be used by others. The people in the city might not know how many people were around Jingwan, and the people around Jingwan were all strangers. Therefore, those who wanted to take advantage of the situation could take advantage of this loophole. Therefore, it was best for both sides to meet face to face and clearly identify each other. However, it was not suitable for some secret guards to show up in front of others. Nanny Gong whispered to Jingwan about this matter. Jingwan frowned slightly. In this case, it was best for her to go to a crowded place. Sometimes, a spy could be an unimaginable threat. Therefore, Jingwan was quite decisive about this matter. It did not matter if she did not show up. After all, she was not really here to have fun. However, she felt that she had to do something step by step. If she suddenly broke into a place where she should not break into, she would probably not be liked, be guarded against, and be regarded as enemies. More importantly, she would cause trouble for others. Therefore, it was quite troublesome to tell Jingwan where to go next. Since Your Highness wants to see the condition of those wounded soldiers, you can go directly to the person in charge. Jingwan thought for a while. This was indeed the best way. In fact, it was very necessary to have a good relationship with the person in charge if she wanted to intervene in a matter without causing any trouble. Because the people trained by Prince Jin were quite capable and had already sent people over, Jingwan actually remembered the layout of the entire prefectural city. She did not need anyone to lead the way at all and could find the way by herself. Probably because they saw that Jingwan was too purposeful. The people who were watching from afar could not sit still any longer and immediately caught up with her. Naturally, the existence of these people could not escape the eyes of Nanny Gong and the others. Therefore, Jingwan was not at all surprised that they were blocked. Instead, she smiled and said, "I thought you girls were not going to show up." The moment she spoke, the other party was a little embarrassed. "Your Highness, have you noticed this long ago? You girls are traveling together. In this city, it should be quite obvious. coupled with the attitude of the people around you. You have been following me for a long time. If you still can't find out, not to mention other things, the guards who followed me will be punished when they return. In the end, they were still young girls. Even if they were affected by the war and by their families, perhaps they knew more things, but in the end, they had not experienced the wind, frost, snow, and rain. They were still innocent and naive. They thought that they hid it well and let them come out. Their families did not have any hope at all. Perhaps it was more to express a kind of attitude. It turned out that they had been discovered long ago. Then why were they still sneaking around? They should have come out earlier. Your Highness, where do you plan to go? We can lead the way. Don't you already know? Are you sure you want to lead the way for me? Jingwan asked with a faint smile. The place where the wounded soldiers were placed was obviously not a good place. There could be death at any time, and it was always filled with the smell of blood and medicine. It would definitely be very unpleasant when mixed together. Moreover, there were endless painful groans. In short, there was only grief and despair. Everyone would feel depressed. Good people would definitely be affected by negative emotions after entering. The families of these girls probably forbade them to set foot in such a place. In fact, they were indeed hesitating. It was not only because of the warning of their families, but also because they had secretly gone there. It was too uncomfortable to stay in that place. Not long after, they felt suffocated. So, to be honest, they really did not want to go. However, this Qin Wang Fei from the capital was much more delicate than them. Moreover, she probably wouldn't be able to stand that kind of place. Perhaps she would just stand at the border for a while before turning around and leaving. They might even be able to show off their superiority in front of this Qin Wang Fei. If your Highness wants to go, we can lead the way. But is your Highness sure you want to go? Were they being checkmated? Jingwan's core and shell did not match after all. She was quite tolerant of these girls. We'll go. Then, your Highness, please. Perhaps because of Jingwan's good attitude, they could not help but soften their attitude. Then, if your Highness feels uncomfortable, you can tell us directly. Don't force yourself. Don't worry, I know what I'm doing. Since this was the case, no one said anything more. Perhaps because the place they were going to was special, no one joked. The wounded soldiers were placed on the other side of the prefectural city. They had vacated an area. In essence, they were still choosing the location from the slums. This was also a subconscious choice made by those in power. If it was anyone else, there would be no exception, and the commoners who were let out would not feel that it was inappropriate. In this way, it was better to take a carriage to save time and energy. The closer they got, the fewer people they could see, and the atmosphere seemed to have already spread. It could be felt from afar. Jingwan asked someone to stop the carriage in advance. She got off the carriage and led the people, step by step, toward the place. This place must be guarded. Thus, before Jingwan and the others could get close, they were already blocked outside. In this place, they could already see some of the situation inside. Especially the smell. It was exceptionally unpleasant. Jingwan endured and did not use a handkerchief to cover her nose and mouth. Not to mention other things, just based on the smell, Jingwan could conclude that the hygiene inside must be terrible. Imperial Guard Qian stepped forward and took out the waist token of Jin Qin Wang Fu to show his identity. The guards looked at each other in dismay. It must be known that not everyone knew that there would be an army supervisor in the Northwest, and that it was a prince. Thus, when they suddenly knew the identity of Jingwan and the others, they were extremely surprised. It must be known that the trip to Jiangnan last year was deliberately publicized by some people. Thus, when Li Hanyuan arrived at a certain place, there were many people who knew about it. However, the common people still did not know. And this time, because of the terrifying reputation of the King of Hell, the insiders wanted to weaken Jin Qin Wang's presence. It was normal that the common soldiers did not know. However, Jingwan did not intend to barge in from the beginning. She only said that she wanted to see the person in charge. These guards naturally did not dare to neglect. A prince of the imperial court, that was a high official, They left quickly, but the people who came out to greet them were also quite fast. It was a middle-aged man and an old man. Perhaps because they were old, the way they walked was still vigorous and vigorous. Jingwan could not help but take a few more glances. The two people walked in front of Jingwan and stopped when they were a few steps away. Although they were puzzled as to why a Qin Wang Fei would come to this place, they still had to follow the rules. It was just that compared to the middle-aged man's restraint, the old man seemed to be very enthusiastic towards Jingwan and her party. Jingwan and the others quickly knew the reason. It turned out that this old man was actually the military doctor of the Northeast Army. It was the old doctor who had gone to the capital with He Junwei's family. The old doctor was nominally a military doctor, but he did not have a military status. Thus, in the Northeast, there might not be any battles for a long time. And when the Northwest was short of manpower, he brought a portion of people and came to help. Dare I ask Wang Fei Nyang Yang, did the Wang Fu's doctor who made the special medicine come? The special medicine was not the kind that had amazing effects, but would also magnify the pain countless times. That kind of medicine, in the beginning, was essentially used for interrogation. However, if the side effects could be removed, it was definitely the best medicine to use as an ordinary medicine. Gong Jiu was influenced by his master to be a doctor of the same profession, especially one who focused on saving lives, so he was usually more respectful. Greetings to the old doctor. Gong Jiu automatically stepped forward. The old doctor was probably surprised by his young age, so his eyes widened slightly. However, now was not the time to be calculative. He stepped forward and directly grabbed Gong Jiu. To be able to make such a medicine at such a young age, you must be very knowledgeable about medicine. Come, I need your help. Gong Jiu wasn't just a doctor. He was a secret guard. Even if he was good at medicine, his martial arts weren't weak either. It was impossible for an old man to drag him away. He had a master. If his master didn't say anything, how could he leave just like that? Jingwan saw this and said, Gong Jiu, you go. Yes. Jingwan looked at the middle-aged man. He was probably the real person in charge. I want to go in and take a look. I wonder if you will allow me to? Seeing that Jingwan was still polite, the slightly stiff body of the person in charge relaxed a little. They were just small fries. In the face of these nobles, they could only serve them respectfully. If they wanted to go in, they could just barge in and there was nothing they could do. They also had to be prepared for the situation inside to be too bad and cause the nobles to feel uncomfortable. If the situation was light, they would probably just be scolded. If the situation was serious, they might even lose their lives. It was really lucky to be able to meet such a person who asked for their help. Since Princess Consort is asked, then this little one will say something. The situation inside is very bad. Princess Consort is a noble person, and I am afraid it will make you uncomfortable. If Princess Consort does not have a reason to go in, this little one does not recommend Princess Consort to go in. From the smell, you can roughly imagine the situation. However, since you're already standing here, your purpose must be to come here. Therefore, it is not very likely that you will leave without taking a look. If it causes you any trouble, please forgive me. Princess Consort, you are too serious. I don't deserve it. There is nothing to deserve it. After all, I did cause you trouble. The girls behind her looked at each other and saw the disbelief in each other's eyes. This Princess Consort didn't put on airs at all. She didn't look like a Princess Consort at all. As the saying goes, a higher official can crush people to death. Any small official, if it were their family members, would also be arrogant. Not to mention other things, compared with their attitude when they came here before, and compared with this Princess Consort, they were inexplicably ashamed because they seemed to be too rude. Although it was uncomfortable, they still followed Jingwan in. Jingwan did not speak along the way and just watched quietly. Not to mention disturbing others, she even took the initiative to avoid people when she saw people carrying people over. The older they got, the deeper they went. Even the guards of the prince's mansion might not have seen a dead person before. This kind of environment had a certain influence on them, let alone the girls. On the other hand, Jingwan seemed to be getting calmer as she walked. However, her originally relaxed expression became colder and colder. Sometimes, she even went into the room to take a look. When she came out, she saw the girls covered their mouths and resisted the urge to vomit. If you don't feel well, go back. However, they were stubborn and shook their heads, unwilling to go back. Jingwan's expression became colder. If you vomit, you will cause trouble for others. They are very busy and tired. Do you understand? They were stunned. They probably did not expect Jingwan's attitude to change so much. Princess Consort, we will definitely endure it. Then do as you like. After turning a small part of the room, Jingwan saw Gong Jiao. At this moment, he was stitching up someone's wound. His movements were very skillful. Jingwan was a little stunned for a moment. When the stitching was done, he applied a light yellow liquid. Gong Jiao cleaned his hands and walked over. Princess Consort. Jingwan nodded. Have you been studying wound stitching? Yes, because it is indeed very effective. Not to mention other places, it should be very useful on the battlefield. I saw that the thread you used was not prepared at the last minute. Did you bring it from the capital? Have you almost mastered this set of skills? I used the catgut suture that you mentioned. Because Prince you had instructed me to do so, I have been studying and organizing it. Jingwan felt that in her husband's previous life, she should have brought up the topic of wound stitching, but she did not know if it was accepted. If it was accepted, then it would definitely be popularized. Her husband had personally led the army for many years, so it was impossible for him not to know about it. Then, he should have prepared for it long ago. From the time he was conferred the title of prince, he should have made preparations in this regard. However, Gong Jiao first learned about it from her, so it was still not popularized. I thought that it would not be accepted. To sew a wound as if it was a piece of cloth, it must be absurd and ridiculous to those who did not know. Why do you say so, Princess Consort? Compared to losing one's life, sewing a wound is really not worth mentioning. I heard from Gong Jiao that this method was first proposed by you, Princess Consort. Gong Jiao has also confirmed that it is very effective. It is a great blessing for the soldiers. Thank you, Princess Consort, the old doctor said and bowed deeply to Jingwan. Jingwan quickly avoided it. Doctor, you are too kind. I just suddenly thought of it. The rest was done by Gong Jiao. If I really want to thank someone, I should thank him. Princess Consort, you are wrong. Many things are wrong. In fact, it is just an idea. So, Princess Consort, you don't have to be modest. Gong Jiao said. That's right. The old doctor agreed. Let's not talk about this. Actually, I have an idea and want to say it. I wonder. Go ahead, Princess Consort. The old doctor said immediately. Someone who could come up with a wonderful idea now might have an idea that was very useful. Actually, I think that the environment here is a little too bad. These soldiers are already suffering from illness. If the environment is too bad, even a healthy person would feel uncomfortable, let alone them. When they feel uncomfortable, their willpower will definitely be depressed. As the saying goes, accumulated worry will lead to illness. If their willpower is depressed, it will definitely have a great impact. Besides, I have also studied some medical books. Especially the more special diseases, such as the plague, are most likely related to the bad environment. The moment these words were said, it caused quite a commotion. https:///11/11807/128414440. You're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.